Great to see some familiar faces and names. Thank you for joining us. My name's Jordan Moy. I'm the Sustainability Education Officer for North Sydney Council. This is webinar as part of our Sustainability Team's Green Events program, where we host a number of different webinars and, when we can, face-to-face events around urban sustainability, from waste to gardening to architecture and design. So a range of different topics throughout the year. But in October, we're focusing on food production. And this one feels really special because we've got a former North Sydney resident and someone who actually was part of our Harvest Collective food gardening program. Before we kick off, though, I'd just like to acknowledge the Camaragal people, the traditional owners and custodians of the land in North Sydney, and pay my respect to the elders past, present and emerging. And also a bit of housekeeping, just like to encourage you to, we'll try to keep it pretty open and interactive, so feel free to shoot through any questions you've got. It'll be myself and Venetia sort of having a chat, but happy to sort of incorporate any questions when we can. So we'll just be sort of talking through her story and journey, but we've also added, we've allowed for some time at the end to have some questions and interaction. But yeah, send through any comments in chat, feel free. I think that's about it. So yeah, welcome. I'd just like to welcome Venetia. Venetia, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation, Jordan. This is such a delightful opportunity to reconnect with, I suppose, the community that gave me my start in food production and farming. It really feels so great to be back. I saw Tony's face, or Tony's screen, pop in, and yeah, it's a real delight to be back in a virtual space with my very first gardening teacher, and I'm really honoured to be able to share my story with you all. So thank you for tuning in and having me.
Yeah, no, thank you for joining us from Byron. And I suppose your commute to work today was a little bit different than what it was in North Sydney, right?
Yeah, well, look, you know what? Unfortunately, my commute these days is in a car. When I was in North Sydney, at least I could be on a bike or on foot, crossing the bridge or taking a ferry. Mm-hmm. So to be honest, I do prefer my North Sydney commutes, but yeah, I must say I do prefer my Byron Bay office. It's a really glorious space. And yeah, I have some pictures here that I can hopefully share with you all.
Yeah, so you've got some fantastic pictures. And what we thought we might do is just share screen and talk through your story, and we're sharing the pictures as well. So we'll start here.
Take it on. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Can everyone see the slides okay? Yeah. Okay. Thumbs up. Good. So starting from the start.
Yeah, back to the very beginning.
Yeah.
So this screen here, this is, the first screen was my back garden in North Sydney, and those sunflowers were the very, very first thing I ever grew. I bought a $1 packet of sunflower seeds from Aldi, right. And I stuck them in this really sandy, dirty soil. Well, it was really sandy soil against my back fence, and I just loved them up, and they absolutely delighted me, and sunflowers still absolutely delight me. So that's my very, 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 very first, my very so I've come a long way since then.
Yeah. And so this is you in 2016.
That's right. Yeah. So this is the year that I started the Harvest North Sydney Collective. I was a lawyer and working for a not-for-profit children's charity, so really doing the sort of daily grind kind of thing.
Yeah.
And always had a burning passion for, I'm an outside cat.
Yeah. I know you mentioned the sunflowers, but so
Mm.
was that at this point, that's pretty much very limited gardening experience so
That
far?
was it. Before joining Harvest Collective, those sunflowers, that was it. That was my entire gardening.
Right. Okay. Wow. Right. And so you signed up to Harvest Collective, and talk us through that and what impact that had on you.
Yeah, totally. So I was really eager to learn more about gardening and food systems. It was something that was really passionate to me. I'd watched all the documentaries, read all the books, but I'd never had any actual experience, and it was very foreign. My grandmother had a beautiful ornamental home garden, but other than that, no one in my family had any experience growing anything, and it was very, very foreign to me. And, you know, living in Sydney was expensive, and I found it quite difficult even finding workshops and places to learn. So when I saw the ad pop up for the Harvest Collective, I just immediately jumped on it because I knew what an amazing opportunity it was. So I absolutely went for it. And one of the requirements of the program, obviously, in exchange for the learning, is to share your learning with the community. And for me, I thought that I could connect with my neighbors through composting and share my learning through Instagram. So I started this account, Good Natured Gardening, and you can see in the bottom left hand, this little picture here in the bottom left screen, that was my very first post, which is in the middle, and that was my back garden. That's what I started with. It's pretty underwhelming.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. It's like the classic Aussie backyard fence, hills hoist, and big patch of bindi infested lawn.
So what did you how did you start, and what did you start with?
Well, in my second picture, you can see I had a crack at a little raised bed. That was after one of the workshops with Tony, learning how to do like a no-dig garden. So I chucked one of those in, and I put in some seedlings, and grew a passion fruit vine on the fence. And, you know, I really delighted in watching the little plants grow and the food that I grew that I could then eat and share. And also watching like the biodiversity, even on a super small scale. You know, you can see the spiders and the little lizards, and the birds all moving into this tiny space where before there was nowhere for them to live. So I really delighted in creating a very sort of tiny ecosystem. And I guess, you know, it kind of just got under my skin, and I just kept.
That's going to be part of the beauty, isn't it? Really, is slowing down, being outdoors, paying more attention to nature. That's sort of a good starting point, isn't it?
Absolutely. And this was like my therapy. Like on the weekend, I would, that's how I'd unwind. I'd come home from the office and I'd turn on the hose and I'd, you know, stand with bare feet on the grass and under the setting sun and water the garden. And these moments really lit me up.
Great.
Even though
I suppose, we were talking about it last night because the current Harvest Collective program is running now. And we've got 49 people as part of the course at the moment. We had our second live Zoom session, and I think we're sort of talking about there is a lot of information to learn when you first start, but you don't have to know and implement it all at when you're first starting out, right? It's just building up and building that knowledge and learning from your mistakes. Is that what happened to you?
It's a long-term relationship with every plant you choose to engage with. That's something I've definitely learned even doing this full time. I mean, I really went for it. I think I've still got my notebook of notes that I took from Tony, and I tried to jot down every little thing and implement all of it. But it hastened my learning journey, definitely. But I guess just applying what you can in the time you have. So, you know, you'll still get beautiful results from it. And there is so much to learn. I mean, there really is a lot to learn.
Yeah.
But we have to start somewhere. So
that's right. That's right. Okay. So what are we looking at here?
Well, that's a bigger picture of my my first food system. It's my training meals. And it's completely unremarkable. It's tiny. I didn't really produce much. I was really kind of just bumbling along and having a go. but you know, referring to that first principle of permaculture, to observe and interact, like I really I engaged in deep observation and interaction in this tiny garden, and yeah, it was just like a micro lab for me, I suppose.
Yep.
And some of those early learnings I really carried with me and still.
Yep.
From. Oh, thanks, Jenny. Oh, so nice to see you. It's been so long.
Yeah, we should mention. Did you say it was Danielle?
Yeah.
Special mention to Danielle, who was the program manager, who's now the coordinator at the Coal Loader, and also Tony Salter, who I think is logged on here tonight as well. So yeah, she was a facilitator as part of the program. So, yeah, good having you.
Yeah, I really owe a great debt to you both. So this is a photo of the start of my composting fixation / fetish. I love composting. That's that simple. I think it's magic, and this was the way that I thought I could really connect with my community. So I signed up to the Share Waste app, which I think is still going, and I'd encourage everyone to jump on it if you are not engaged in composting. So I listed myself as a composting of food scrap recipient, and I was the only one on the lower North Shore. So I had lots of...
I'm pleased to report that there are a lot more.
I hope there are more now.
Although there are, most are at max capacity, but there's a lot more who've joined on. Yeah.
Well, I had the monopoly back then. On food waste. And I would come home most days to this situation. So this is next to my letterbox by the front gate. And I'd have, you know, dozens of little boxes.
Yeah, can you sort of describe?
Yeah.
Because I have seen it, and Venetia was kind enough to let us do a bit of a tour of her setup, a community sort of tour. But can you describe the setup you had and how many people and how it all worked?
Well, I think I had about 25 people who would regularly drop their food scraps to me. So they would deposit their little tubs or their bokashi bin by the front gate. Jordan, if you flick to the next slide, I think I've got a picture of it. Yeah, and then around the side of my house, I had those 2 compost tumblers. So I would throw the food scraps into the tumblers, and then I would mix that up with sugarcane mulch or newspapers or whatever cardboard paper waste I had lying around. And then after it had been sitting in there for a little while, I'd put it into a cold compost bin. I also accepted bokashi, which I had like a little worm farm going, and I bred just stacks of worms, and I would stick worms in my cold compost bin. And yeah, it was a great system. I made loads of compost, and I didn't have too many rats.
Yeah,
I thought would be a bit of an issue. So.
Right. And what did you do with the finished compost product in the end?
I kept most of it and put it in my garden. So I just expanded more garden beds. Occasionally I'd give it to any of the people who would give me their food waste. I would return compost to them, but largely it went into my garden. It's amazing how much volume drops in garden beds. You really do need to be inputting a lot to it to keep those plants really healthy. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, it was a great garden amendment for me. I remember when I first started building my garden, I went to Bunnings to buy everything I needed, and I was just incensed at how much plastic was involved in setting up a new garden. And so finding like plastic and waste-free streams of garden inputs has been a real kind of drive for me, and something I'm still working on here in Byron. So
yeah. Great. So, and I'm assuming that was whole part of the start of the next part of the journey after you sort of started to learn more about food gardening, and is that right? It's sort of
I just like kept on. The food waste app is Share Waste. So all the while this was happening, I am just still learning and getting more and more interested in food production. And it's definitely, I'm kind of fallen down the wormhole, the rabbit hole.
Yes. So let's talk about the next chapter.
That's right. So I was still working full time.
Yep.
This is a little doodle I did at my desk one day. I was really
I was wondering if you did that. I'm
this is an original mine. I really was feeling challenged by the indoor work I was doing. And I could feel this really strong pull to be working with plants. You read all these like motivational quotes, do what lights you up and all of that kind of jazz. And really, like for me, it was absolutely unequivocally, it was food production. And so I guess I felt this real pull or this real calling. I was like, this isn't me, even though I feel this work is really valuable. I can be putting energy into something a lot more meaningful. So I went and studied. I was open to learning anything, but I ended up going back to uni and I did a graduate certificate in permaculture design. I was really eager to learn food production with strong ecological alignment, and there wasn't much available. I really struggled to find good courses and good training programs. This was a real deep dive for me into the theory behind food systems, but it gave me no practical experience. And when I finished that course, I realized how much I needed to just go out and get my hands dirty. So it took me a year and a half to get that qualification. It was great, very pleased with myself. And then
did you do that part-time or full-time?
Part-time. So I was working full-time and studying part-time and not doing much else in between. And as soon as I finished that and I thought, all right, that's it, I'm out. So I left my job. I left my lovely home and my beautiful housemate in North Sydney and packed my bag and just kind of looked for volunteering opportunities. It was the only way I really felt I could learn quickly the skills I needed in food production. I'm quite keen. I was always very eager to work in food systems, policy and development, but I felt in order to understand it, I had to actually become a primary producer myself, so I'd know real challenges involved. So one of the very first places I ended up going to when I was visiting my mum on the Gold Coast, I came down to Byron to see a friend, and she introduced me to someone and he took me to the farm. And I think on the next slide is the photo I took the day I saw. That's me. This is my last. This was the end of my home garden.
The garden's looking very good there.
I really got into vertical production.
Right.
I grew pumpkins up the fence, which I
really? I didn't know you could do that. Right.
And this is the garden I saw at the farm, and I was really captivated by it because I was quite keen to learn more about perennial plants, so plants that live in the ground for more than a year, and how we can have really integrated and diverse food systems. So I found this place at the farm in Byron, which is kind of designed on the principles of permaculture and agroecology, which really immediately resonated with me. I think agroecology is an amazing framework that I hope becomes much more common parlance in the coming years.
To be honest, I hadn't really heard that term before we sort of chatted. I wonder if you could sort of expand on that a bit further.
Yeah, absolutely.
The memes.
It's I guess the application of ecological principles to agricultural systems. So we're really designing with the principles of nature and ecology, but it's not just an environmental system, it's a social and an economic and a political system. So it's very holistic in its view of the world. So, it's not just what you put in the ground, social justice issues and employment issues are just as important, which I think, ideas around food justice are quite missing in the regenerative agriculture space and conversation. And I think agroecology really encapsulates that beautifully. It's quite well defined and practiced in Europe, the UK, across the US as well. And I think it's slowly beginning to make inroads in Australia, which is exciting. And this really feels like a landing place for me, working in the agroecology.
Yep. Yeah. Right.
So you can keep cruising through, Jordan.
Sure. So you started as a volunteer, or did you jump straight on as a paid staff member? Or
no, volunteer. Yeah, I started as a volunteer. I just sent a text to Evan. This was his plot at the farm, and yeah, he was pretty desperate for help, which was great, as most farmers are.
Yeah.
And I only planned to be there for a couple of weeks. So I'd actually lined up a few more gigs at other farms.
Right.
But I don't know, there's something about this little patch of earth that really got under my nails and skin. And yeah, I have been there ever since. So this is, back in July 2019. And you can see it looks like a really classic market garden. Nothing particularly novel about it yet, but you'll see as the photos go on how much it sort of evolves into more of a foresty food system. But we had about just under 1.5 acres under cultivate. Just under 2 acres under cultivation. So it was a pretty big space to be learning in.
So when you first started, what kind of things were you doing?
Oh, like everything, just straight in. I think on this first day, Evan had me on the flame weeder, which felt really unsafe.
Flame weeder?
Yeah.
What is that?
Like a blowtorch. So you've got a big gas canister on your back.
Right.
Like it's literally a blowtorch. And you use it to kill weeds without using chemicals. So it's a very useful tool in a chemical-free system.
I see.
But it's still quite...
Is that something that you still use now?
Yeah, still today. Especially with crops like carrots, it really helps you to manage your weed seed bank.
Wow.
Could be great in the home gardening context. This is November 2019, so I'd been there just over 6-8 months, and the garden was half the size when I started, and this is it at the full size there. And it's quite it's a beautiful system, and we were growing an awful lot of food. We were selling to restaurants, doing about 20 to 30 veggie boxes a week. So we were producing, lots of food, no chemicals. It was all organic principles. Yeah.
I'm assuming how many people were sort of working on the farm at this point?
There were 3 of us who were mostly full-time. I was doing, Evan and I were full-time, 5, 6, 7, 8 days a week. And we had quite a few other harvesters who joined us on harvest days, and Lydia, very dear friend and colleague who's still working with me today.
Oh, fantastic.
A week.
And is it early starts as well?
Yeah, less so now. I'm not as fast as I'd like to be in the morning, but I mean, on a harvest,
I don't mean you're on the spot there. I'm sure you spend a lot of time there, so it's just out of interest.
More late finishes, but you'd end up easily working 12-hour days, 5 days a week. Like it can just be massive. Bronwyn, the pest pressure, we use things like neem. But really feeding up the soil is probably the most important part to our and diversity. And I've found that the more diverse the garden gets, the less pest pressure we have. Like I spray and dipel for caterpillars, which is an organic approved input, but it's incredible how little pest pressure I get. I started getting a stipend pretty early on. So I was volunteering for a few weeks, and then I'd take just a stipend from the business, but I was largely self-funded. So I had savings when I left Sydney, and I was really supporting myself through all of this. If I've learned one thing, if you want to make a lot of money, this is not how you do it.
What about any sort of sacrificial sort of plantings and did you do that on your farm at all, or?
To like attract pets.
Yes.
They'll inevitably just at a scale like this, there will usually be some. But yes, we did. Like I think we used to do a bit of that with like broad beans one year. We tried that for aphids. but not too intentionally, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, not too intentionally.
Mm.
Yeah, I found soil health is absolutely the most important part of pest management.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. And why is that?
Healthy plants can seem to just develop their own immunity,
Yeah.
and having a really diverse garden around them as well, like, and you'll see the trees. So there's a line of trees that we've planted here, and what's unique about this garden is the integration of perennials and trees, which has been a really good learning experience. We've learned a lot of things that worked and many things that didn't work, but it's remarkable comparing, like swapping notes with the growers across the paddock who grow in weed mat without any shade or protection. You know, they get really hammered by pests, and I just don't see them. I really
that's
don't see
interesting.
them. Yeah. They're there, but in really small amounts, and it's very manageable. Yeah. Yeah. So this is a very grainy picture, unfortunately, but that's the same garden bed as the previous photo. So those trees have walked out. Yeah, and this is the joy of growing food in the subtropics. It just throws itself out of the ground. So we do a lot of cover cropping. I'm really passionate about cover cropping. I'd never really understood what it was before I started. But
that was my next question. Yeah, can you talk us through that a bit?
Or green manure is another term for it. So those plants in the middle there, we're basically growing them as food for the soil. We will grow them to the stage before they set seed, and then we'll cut them down and we'll turn them back into the soil just to allow that soil biology to eat the food. There's a diversity of plants we use too. So you usually have a mixture of legumes, brassicas, big like daikon turnips, which can just drill down deep into the ground. And all of these plants can access different nutrient in the soil, and their roots will penetrate to different soil strata as well. So it helps to prevent compaction. It helps to build the soil microbiology. It helps to fix nitrogen because we're putting legume crops in there. And yeah, putting a bit of carbon back in there. And it's just glorious. It's also a really beautiful habitat for small birds and insects and frogs. And yeah, I'm really passionate about cover cropping. And I'd encourage, I never incorporated it into my home garden system, but if I did a home system, I would definitely do this too. Yeah, so we would cut those plants down to the soil level. And then, I mean, I've got big like walk behind tractors and to do this, but you can certainly do it by hand, even with a whippersnipper, or you can just literally pull them out by the roots and just lay them down. There are many ways to do it.
And then how long do you sort of wait before you can plant anything on top of that? Yeah.
Sometimes we'll plant in the coming week into it.
Right.
Just because we have so much, like we really have to turn some space over. But you can, depends as well what you've incorporated. Really woody stuff might take a little bit longer. But yeah, usually a week. Sometimes I'll just like take a fistful of soil out and just see how much it's broken down. And if it's broken down, plant into it.
Yep. I suppose I was wondering about the trees as well. I mean, even though you're still farming a large area, it is, compared to say other larger scale farms, it's still a fairly small size.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose there was around, having trees takes up space where you can plant veggies and
definitely
the productivity was it that sort of outweighed the lack of space, or
and
reduced space.
They also throw a lot of shade. So that big garden we first saw in the last few months, I've only just taken on half myself. And so half is now under the management of a different group of people, and they're really focusing on the forest system. And I've got half which I focus on the annual system. And I have thinned out the trees a lot. I still have bananas, and I still have tamarillos, and I have some like white cedars and other quite tall perennial plants. But I've thinned them out and I've made them very, like, they're at least 11, 12 meters apart. And I found that that gives me enough sunlight to grow. And I'm able to obtain a yield from those lines. Like, the bananas are a really great crop. And I've really loved working with the banana plants. So those lines pay for themselves. And the biodiversity that they host, they're kind of like hedgerows in a way, is so worth it. Like, I will never touch those lines with any kind of sprays, like the dipel or even the neem and other, like, I just don't touch them. And they host so many frogs and small birds and amazing other critters come and do my pest management for me.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so this is a very experimental system, but I've thinned it out a bit. This is a photo of Evan and Lydia, who I've largely worked with in the annual system. And, you know, I think I've loved working with these two. They're so radiant and joyful and passionate and really experimental. So we've done lots of really edgy intercropping and really beautiful, beautiful plantings, which almost stop you in your tracks sometimes. They're so beautiful. So this is in our big spiral garden that we planted last winter.
Right, that's such a beautiful picture. It's the
Yeah.
spiral garden. How does that sort of work in terms of a farm context?
Yeah, so and you'll be able to see in a coming photo, the center part of the patch, we're trying to turn into a classroom space. Yeah, this is another photo from that same space. We planted purple cabbages and ranunculus, and there's some other flower in there, and you can see kale and rainbow chard and fennel and cornflowers and celery, and it's just nice.
Wow.
But it's beautiful. And I think, you know, I'm really moved and inspired by beautiful spaces, and I know that other people are too. And I really feel that creating spaces like this helps people, inspire people to think differently about their food and their food systems.
The flowers there, are they edible flowers, or do you sell those at all? Or?
No, these ones aren't, unfortunately. These are ranunculus, but they're glorious. I don't know if they grow in Sydney. They should do. But they are a very beautiful cut flower. And yeah, we grow lots of flowers. I love growing flowers for the nectar. So I always have flowers planted throughout, like planted in beds or on the edges of them, because I like it. But it's also important to bring in the pollinators that are going to pollinate your vegetables, and the predatory insects that are going to eat the insects that are chewing on the plants.
There's that diversity you were talking about.
Absolutely. So producing nectar is as important as creating food. So this is the garden from above. It's a really spectacular pattern. Wow. And you can see that spiral garden there, that sort of wave in the middle, which is actually a sun trap that's been designed by one of the other fellows who's worked in this garden, Bunya.
Oh, no way.
And yeah, it's designed around the golden ratio. And we're on a east-west orientation here. So the sun comes, that sun trap just captures the day's sun that sort of comes over like this. And there are perennial plants at the back and annual plants at the front. And yeah, we just made really good use of that sunlight space. Yeah, right. Really beautiful. And you can see those trees that have popped up. You can see all the bananas. Yeah, and there's me in the middle there talking to, I think that was the crew from the restaurant came out one day to have a look in the garden. But yeah, you can see how much it's grown. It's
and how much it's changed as well, really, from those initial photos in 2019. It's just straight lines down the whole row, and it's definitely, even the way you plant now seems more diverse.
Yeah, it's really quite radical.
Yeah. And you say there are other sort of farms on that side? Are they sort of, but everyone's sort of doing something different, is it?
Yeah, I'm sure there are people here tonight who have been and walked past this patch. So it's at the farm in Byron Bay, which is just off the highway when you're driving to Byron. And it's kind of the easiest way to describe it. It's like the Westfields of farms. So there are like 18.
Not sure about that, but anyway.
There are like 18 different enterprises, businesses who all lease from the farm. Okay. So we all run our little farm businesses. So there are 4 of us who grow commercially and we rent little plots of land. There's a guy who's running pastured eggs. There's people doing cattle and pigs. There's a flower farmer across the way from me. There's the restaurant, the ice cream place, and yeah.
Great.
It's a clever context.
So what are we looking at here? This is just a more recent shot.
Yeah. So this I guess is a fairer representation of what my system looks like now. I took this photo maybe a month ago. All of those plants I'll be harvesting this Thursday, and they're beautiful. The beetroots are the best I've ever grown. The carrots are amazing. And you can see in the far right of the screen, that's a buckwheat cover crop that I've been playing around with. That's a really great cover crop if you just want something super fast. It matures in like 3 to 4 weeks. And it's like growing your own mulch. So I've used that to mulch other beds and integrate in the garden in other ways. But you can see I've retained some of the trees and the bananas there, and they provide they break up the intensity of the heat over summer and the hotter months, and those trees drop their leaves in winter so they don't block the light. And I can grow turmeric and ginger underneath them. So I'm really refining it.
What grows really well on your farm? Like, what's the standout veggie on your farm?
I think, look, our carrots are pretty exceptional.
Yeah, right.
I really love, like, the root vegetables are great. Like, this is volcanic soil. It's some of the best soil in the state, and it's beautiful soil. Yeah, the root veggies do really, really well here. Everyone does. Quick question from Ivy. The machinery, yes, we do all get to share the machinery. So there's a walk behind tractor and there's a big tractor. And I am so grateful, and the big processing shed and a cool room. So all the farmers get to share those resources. So it's a really good early model, I think, of a share farming system. I'd love to see more examples like this around the place. I don't own land. I am a first generation farmer, and I don't have the money to buy a farm. I may never be able to afford one. And this is the only way I've been able to get access to land. Yeah. No possums here, thankfully.
Wow, that's a big difference compared to North Sydney, that's for sure.
I know, they ate all of my passion fruit. It's so heartbreaking. Just a few little, not even brush turkeys. The ducks have been a real nightmare this year. The other growers lost thousands of dollars worth of seedlings. I've just come and nibble at them every night.
There are ducks on that site, aren't there? Is that right?
Wild ducks, yeah. The wild ducks have been a real problem this year. Thankfully, I think, again, because of the trees, they didn't really find my crops, so they haven't eaten mine.
Yeah.
The big insects, rats. Rats are absolutely the biggest problem I have. Yeah, there's a macadamia patch just across from my garden, and it's a constant hassle trying to keep those populations low. It's really difficult. But yeah, I'm really grateful to not have bush turkeys or possums.
Yeah, I bet.
These are just some of the photos that I've taken in the garden over the years. Just those beautiful little treasures that you stumble upon. That just like make you stop in your tracks. These are some of the veggies that we grow. There are some of the rainbow carrots. Oh, they're so good.
They look amazing.
Yeah, the color of these vegetables is just stunning. Absolutely.
What about the taste?
Stunning.
Yeah.
This is the food I wanted to eat. it's the food that I desired most dearly and really struggled to find. And it's such a pleasure to be growing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you focusing on sort of heirloom varieties and hybrid or diverse sort of unique varieties, or what are you focusing on growing?
It's a really good question. So I guess before I started, I always worked with heirloom varieties. I think that, you know, we really need to be taking a very active role in stewarding our seed stock.
Yeah.
This is something that we as citizens should be really deeply concerned about and be participating in. And I would encourage everyone to be using and purchasing heirloom seeds for their home garden. I have really found, though, that in a commercial context, it's very difficult using some of those varieties because the germination rates are a lot lower. They are not as resistant to disease pressure, and they're sometimes not as vigorous. So with a lot of the seeds I have, I can get open pollinated, but with some others, like I'll be honest, with the brassicas, the hybrid seed are so much like you just get stronger, more powerful plants that with nearly 100% germination. It can be like I've put some carrots in recently, and I've had seeds from a commercial supplier, and then seeds that from a a small organic heirloom company, and the germination is so low I literally cannot afford to use that seed stock. There's a real opportunity cost with it.
But I think we are getting a few questions about seeds, and so how do you where do you mainly get
seeds from?
Do you use seeds that produced on site as well for the next season?
Yeah, I do. I really try and do a bit of everything. It's just for my own learning. So I raise all of my seedlings myself, which has been a great thing to learn.
Yeah.
And I source all of my seed. I also do loads of cuttings for plants that we can grow from cuttings, more of the like herbs. And I'm really passionate about that now. But I get a lot of my seeds from Royston Petrie. And Royston Petrie is one of the big ones. Green Harvest, they're great as well. They're organic. I really should know more off the top of my head, but
we can send through some links maybe to everyone afterwards if the ones that you're using and
but Royston Petrie is probably my big go-to for the seeds. They're really reliable and good quality, and they're an Australian company. Yes, that's right, Bronwyn, Royston Petrie. Yep. And the pests, diversity. Super healthy soil. I make compost. I didn't have a photo of my amazing big heap of compost which I make.
Can you talk us through that? What is the compost pile?
So I've been composting all of the waste from the Three Blue Ducks restaurant, which is on site, and that's about 600 to 700 litres of food waste every week. And I just take that out to the back paddock and mix it with like wood chip and just let it sit there for about a year before I use it. And I have a big tractor to do that now, so it's pretty cool to have such a big system. And I sometimes shovel in the cow shit that's lying around. It's in the cow paddock. And I'm really liberal with compost. I put lots of compost in. We use chicken manure, we use rock mineral, we use
are you adding those things along over the course of the year, are you? So are you turning it all with a compost that size?
The compost pile I turn with a tractor, but definitely, it's enormous. I couldn't do that by hand. But I amend my soil regularly, and cover crop. I plan to have all the garden under cover crop for at least 2 to 3 months of the year, so to give it that rest and to feed it. And I always apply an organic chicken manure, rock mineral, compost, a little bit of potash for potassium, which has really helped a lot. And when we started the garden, because it's a clay soil, we put a bit of ag lime to reduce the pH because they're quite acidic, the clay soils. Yeah.
Is there anything that can't go into the compost?
That can't go in the, oh, look, I really, you know, if it lived, it can live again. The only thing I know, I can't afford to be fussy. I'll just take anything from the kitchen, and it's out there for over a year, so it really gets a long time to break down. I play a slow game with it, but because there's so much, I can just let it sit there for ages.
Does that mainly cover you for what you need on the farm?
Yeah, we use all of it on the farm, and I could really use more. The meat scraps, so I try to avoid the plate scrapings that I am avoiding now. So I don't encourage the chefs to give me their meat, but sometimes I will tip out a bucket and there's meat in it, and I'm not going to pull it out. So it's fine. It really just kind of all turns through and sits there for so long that it gets really hot too. So it's not a perfect hot system, but it does, most of it gets really, really hot. So it would cook out any nasty pathogens and stuff. So I'm not too worried about, I wouldn't be doing that in the home system, but because I've got this scale, I can really, I can just chuck everything in. Yeah.
Great.
Oh yeah, so this is a beautiful photo. Yeah, so these that's a cover crop there. That's a photo of a cover crop. Sunflowers, so easy to grow. I would encourage everyone to grow sunflowers. They bring so much joy. This is another cover crop. So this is like the more social side to what I've been doing. Jack and Ella in the previous photo were some interns who started with me, and these guys were all a part of a volunteer day. We were about to cut out. This is another cover crop there that they're lying on, and they've become really beautiful social experiences.
Are you still accepting volunteers at all?
Yeah, we've just started again after our lockdown lifted last week. So every Wednesday morning for 3 hours I have volunteers come and just kind of jump in on whatever I'd be doing. So it's a great experience to just kind of
fantastic
play farming. This is a photo of Lydia, who I've been working with since day one. Patch, right. And it's been beautiful to journey with her.
So there was a question from Bronwyn about can anyone volunteer, and how do they do that?
Absolutely. Probably reach out to me through Instagram, just so I can tell you where to meet and the times and such. But anyone can come. It's just rocking up at the garden at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday morning with a hat and some water.
Okay.
Sticking around for 3 hours and I'll go and get you working.
Yeah. Oh, great. I think that's all the photos.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, that just looks incredible, what work you've been doing for the last couple of years, and even to see how it's changed and developed and grown. And so you started as a volunteer, then you became a paid member, and now what's your role there?
Yeah, I guess I went pretty rapidly into kind of like a business partner relationship with Evan. And then he moved on to a share farm last year. So I managed it by myself for a year. And then from the beginning of the financial year this year, I've taken it on as my own sole trader business. So it's my first little farm.
Fantastic.
So, and that feels really great. I like having the sort of capacity to make decisions around it and build a website and branding and all that kind of stuff. So
I will share Venetia's Instagram, but I follow it and it's great. But it includes lots of cool pics and lots of information about what she's doing, so it's pretty cool. talk about maybe encourage everyone to send through some questions as well. We've got 10 minutes, so if you've got any questions that you want answered that we haven't answered along the way.
Well, there's a photo, there's a question here from Georgie. Hey, Georgie. She's asked about the social, economic and the political parts of agroecology, which super big question, and I'd love to chat more about it. But I guess to touch on really briefly, I suppose a lot of my I'm trying, that's the next phase of this business, is to really entwine those principles of agroecology into my farming. And I'm starting, I suppose, with the social side first, and then I really want to build into the economic and the political part. But for myself, I am running for council elections here in Byron, which they're in December this year. So, you know, I really want to be taking this to a wider and political platform too. I really want to champion agroecology as a, you know, as a means for us to be sort of driving our agricultural policy around. I think it has great merit for that. And I'm also working with Young Farmers Connect, and through that organisation, I'm also helping to really build community and create more opportunities for new, young and emerging farmers to support them and help them. Because I found this really hard as well. Like, the photos are lovely, but this has been like, you know, there are times where it's been a total sufferfest, and it would have been really easy to give up on it. And you know, I'm deeply concerned about how hard it's been for me to do this. And I'm quite well resourced. I don't have economic resources, but you know, I have had a good education, and I have reasonably good social skills, and I have, you know, maturity on my side, which a lot of, like, my 20-year-old self couldn't have done what I've done now. And it's a real challenge. I think the next generation of farmers really face a lot of serious adversity, and as a community and as a society, I think we need to be really serious about how we can support our future farmers and to create a really stable and secure food system.
Talking about, I think we used, you know, I suppose that's really sort of ties into what we talked about, or part of the what we were promoting is like you're wanting to change the local food economy, and is it based around those sort of principles really, and integrating like local food production as the core focus.
Yeah, I think it's a really good central message to share about relocalizing our food systems. It has a real multiplier effect when we support the local food economy. And it's, you know, available to all of us wherever we are. We all have local food system. I mean, some of us are luckier than others in terms of what's locally available, and here in the subtropics, like, we're almost spoiled for choice most of the year. But I know for those of you in Sydney, like especially those in North Sydney, like, there's a fantastic farmers market available, and that's a really good starting point for most people to, you know, really connect with their local farmers. And like, it's important, I think, for us to just get really curious about where our food is coming from and how it's produced. I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, to put it politely, about how our food is produced and where it's come from. And if we knew the full story, I'm sure we should be a lot more outraged about it, is kind of my feeling. Should be really, really, really angry, actually, about the food system that exists around us, both, you know, nationally and internationally. It's deeply exploitative. And, you know, it doesn't make money. So I understand why there aren't many small scale farmers out there. Like, it's a really tough gig.
Shout out to Lisa from Northside Produce Market who's joining us tonight. So she manages that and the market there, and I know has a big focus on regenerative farmers and local farmers and often small scale farmers. So
there are some absolute champions wherever you are in Australia or even the world. Like, you can bet your bottom dollar there are some epic farmers in your community, and if we can just shift it's one of the things that's a very easy change for all of us is to sort of, shift our spending habits and funnel it into those people and those food systems, because we can literally reshape our landscape by making different food choices. You can be a farmer at arm's length by supporting those people who are doing really great work on the land.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are the, I suppose we talked about, what are some principles that you've learned on the farm or along your journey that might apply to people in North Sydney or gardeners and, backyard gardeners?
About growing? How to scale it? Yeah, I guess.
Would diversity be one of them? Right.
Yeah, I think really I can't understate the importance of soil health and fertility. And that has, seeing how much more I've like really coming to understand that as a commercial producer has been very eye-opening. Sort of delving a little bit more into the soil science is also quite helpful, and watering and just getting the fundamentals of growing really dialed. But I guess what I would love people to really understand is how much food we can grow in a really small space. And if we can really become very efficient with that, we could all produce quite a lot of food. Like, I would love to get back into home gardening again, because I could just it'd be such a buzz now, because I know I could produce a lot of food in a really, really, really small space. I mean,
I was saying to you that I had, a rather large yard, and now that you were saying to me that, I could probably produce 80% of my food if I used that entire space. And
if I had my little I would dig up my lawn. Like, I have no hesitation about doing that. Like, just growing. I love growing in the ground. Like, you want to, of course, do a soil test, and there's problems with that in the cities. But if your soil's healthy, like, think of yourself as like a really mini farmer. And take those principles of primary production and just scale it down really small, and you'll be able to produce a huge amount of food. Really
love it. I think there was a question on irrigation, which is very relevant because
I just got my irrigation in today, 2.5 years later.
So how does all that work?
So I've been using, this probably won't mean much to you guys, but like a traveling irrigator, which is what you normally use in broadacre pasture, which is a huge clunking dinosaur of a machine which throws water in like a 40-meter diameter. And that's just been a nightmare to wrestle with. And I just put in some overheads today. I got the system more or less finished, which was great. So I use overhead watering. Drip irrigation is also another alternative, and I know a lot of market gardeners use drip. But for me, overhead's just the easiest thing to do.
When do you find the best time to water all the plants?
I like to do it like, we've got a timer, and we set that to just before sunrise. So it's better. I mean, it reduces evaporation. The plants are more receptive to it. It's better this time of year, especially like the cucurbits and stuff. They really suffer from humidity and the powdery mildew. So if you water them during the heat of the day, they really don't like it. They can tolerate it a bit better in the early hours of the day. And watering in the morning as well, maybe reduce slug pressure because you don't have such wet beds and vegetables sitting there overnight. So
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Good one. Well, I think we've managed to get through most of the questions. Yeah, so thank you for talking us through your journey so far. Yeah, really interesting, and yeah, it just looks amazing what you're doing up there. So yeah, thank you for sharing with us.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's really lovely to talk about what I do.
Thanks to everyone for sending through all their questions. And I agree. Someone said that Bronwyn said 1 hour is not long enough, and I agree. So maybe we can do something else and have Venetia here again, maybe talking about another topic in agroecology in more detail, maybe, or something like that. So hopefully we can keep in touch and have you join us again.
Absolutely. If you're up Byron Way, when things open up a little bit, like I'm in a very public farm, you can just walk straight past and give me a wave, and I'm usually always there. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, especially Venetia, and thanks everyone for joining us tonight.
Thank you, everyone. It's been wonderful.
Okay, thanks. Have a good night.
Happy gardening.
Yeah, happy gardening.
Yeah, that was great.
Great. See you, everyone.